Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Class Zero Soldiers Podcast Live Edition. We're doing another one of these. We got some plans for the channel coming soon. A little bit of changes here and there. Hopefully to bring you some better content and more timely content. I know we had a big 8-9 month gap. We could have had a whole baby during that time. Just
Yeah, well, there's a lot that's happened, so there's that. It might not be a full human, but we have things to talk about.
absolutely. So I'll just go ahead and start us off. I'm Zero.exe, your host, and I'd like to welcome in my co-host, Soldier by Night. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, Zero. Thank you for asking. How are you?
It's going, man. It's been a long week, but I don't work tomorrow. Thank the Lord above. So I'm chilling. I'm here to talk about some gaming stuff. We got quite a few things to talk about. Just to kind of tee up the agenda here, we're going to talk about the Pokemon Presents that happened, came and went. Some cool bits of
hmm
information there. My most exciting announcement from there is not the one that you probably think. I'll share that later. We're going to talk about the Switch 2 Direct coming in April. This is our last chance to talk about it before it happens. So we're going to tell you everything that we think could happen, will happen, won't happen, and everything in between. And we also got to talk about the Nintendo Direct that never happened. For the first time in, I believe, 7 years, we did not have a general Nintendo Direct for February. And a lot of people thought it would happen. We thought we were going to get one last hurrah for the Switch 1 before the big April one, but that didn't happen.
And that's kind of been on brand for Nintendo recently, especially with how quiet last year was with big releases to games and things like that, right? I mean, the biggest one being Pokemon taking more of a back seat, right? Since I don't think we got a Pokemon game last year. Did we? Did we not even
It
get a
was,
spin-off or
I
anything?
think that was the first calendar year where we got no mainline or spin-off Pokemon series games. We did get the trading card game Pocket, so that was mobile though, but we didn't get anything on consoles that I'm aware of. Oh, I think we got Pokemon Stadium 2. I think that came to Nintendo Switch Online during last year.
Like earlier in the year or something?
Yeah, but no
Yeah.
actual native Nintendo Switch games for Pokemon.
And honestly, that's a good thing for Nintendo. Like, hey, take more time in the kitchen, especially with coming out with a brand new console. Because think about it, right? When has Nintendo ever come out with a console at the same time as any of the other, I don't want to say competitors, because I'm not really like, what is
They're
it?
associates within the industry. They're colleagues, we'll say.
Exactly, exactly. And they are, right? So it's like they've never made them, you know, PS5, Xbox Series X came out, we still had the Switch, and it's not like Nintendo's ever felt any pressure to come out with a console like that to compete or anything. So take your time with it. Hopefully, this announcement has a lot of pleasant surprises because we only had the teaser released, right? That's what we got, I think, what, earlier last month
The
or
shadow dropped
January?
hardware trailer, basically, is what
Yeah.
what it was. We got one new game announcement there, which is Mario Kart, and I firmly believe that that's going to be the launch title. I think we mentioned this last time, but they've never launched a Nintendo console with a Mario Kart game. They've been within the launch window, but there's never been a day one Mario Kart for a console. And thinking about it, it's kind of weird that it never happened because it's such a big seller. I mean, there's 67 million people that own a copy of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the Nintendo Switch. It's the best-selling Nintendo game ever.
It also helped that they bundled it with a V2 Switch, I think, at some point when V2 came out.
Yeah.
They had you could just pick it up and have it there. But yeah, you're right. People, it's one of those games where
It's
I know
evergreen.
someone who's close to me. Yeah, exactly. She's like not she would rather watch someone play most like one player type games or, story kind of like games, but when it comes to Mario Kart, and it was interesting. I actually asked her just to kind of go off on this real quick. I asked her, so curious, like what is it about Mario Kart that you can do over and over? Because she's just like, because I'm like, you're doing the same thing over and over, and that's kind of what you want to avoid in other games. So then, what's so different about Mario Kart? But I think she didn't really know. But I'm like, I think it's because you have the thing about Mario Kart is that even though you're doing the same courses over and over and over again, so many variables are at play. At the last moment, you can have a blue shell hit you. Uh, you might get three bananas, and somebody will hit one while it's just circling around you. You might be struggling and hit one of their three mushrooms that's circling around them. Like, there's so many different variables. And dude, all of the new courses are absolutely incredible. The fact that we got those, it's like we got a Mario Kart game during the Switch's release while having it just be a port and they just added it on. I love what they did with it. I'm so happy that we got that. A quick question. What do you think the new Mario Kart will be called? Just throw a name out there or throw a title out there. What do you have? Was it just Tour that we got courses from, or did we get any courses from the mobile app? Oh, Tour. I was thinking about the arcade. Sorry. It's like GP or something. Yeah. Uh, I've never played it. Have you played it? I like a lot of those that they brought back that we had never seen 3D versions of. They weren't sloppily done. They integrated the what is it, the gravity into them. Like they dude, that bathroom level is still like that's crazy. The new that's a new yeah. Mm, yeah, I like what you said with X. Yeah, maybe it is Mario Kart X. Uh, I actually don't have any ideas for it. I was being generic in my mind. I was like, okay, Super Mario Kart. Ooh, I don't know. I don't know what they'll do, but it does look like from what they teased that those courses look a lot larger. Wouldn't it be crazy if we got back to our roots remember with the GameCube, you could LAN what, like 16 players? Was it 32 players, 16 players? I don't know, something where you could like connect all the GameCubes and it was like you could have a crazy LAN party. So can you imagine if they upped how many players could be in each course? That would be fun. Either in person or online, or maybe just online. But um, I think that would be great. I kind of want them. Do you remember in Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U, the superpower where you had all eight like
Oh, Crazy
surrounding you
Eights.
was
Yeah.
yeah was is that broken? Is that why they didn't bring it back?
Now that you mention it, yeah, I think they did take that out of Deluxe, didn't they?
That's not in the game, and I noticed that while playing recently. I was like, what happened to the eight items flying around? I kind of I kind of wonder if it was just like them balancing the game, or maybe they took it out because they didn't want it to be known for that, or
No, it
something like that.
it was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Is it? I don't
Yeah.
remember ever getting it.
You
Then
have to
maybe
be
I just
like
have bad
really
luck.
far back. I think that's probably what it is.
I hate. Maybe it's still better than getting a shiny Pokemon though. I don't know. Maybe I just never got it though.
Could be, you know. But yeah, it was based off of like Lucky 7, which was for Mario Kart 7. They just kind of upped it. But going back to what you mentioned about the courses being really well done, I know one of the big criticisms was like graphically they weren't quite on the level of the original courses in 8, which is fair. But I mean, considering how many courses we were getting in such a short amount of time, I'm okay with it. Like some of them were very like the textures were very cartoony. Like there was one level, I think it was like Yoshi's Ridge from the GameCube or something, and the grass was just like a block of green with no texture on it whatsoever. So I mean that was a criticism that happened with some of those courses, but honestly for me that was a trade-off I was willing to take just to get that many more courses in such a short amount of time. They weren't all bangers, but you know, some of them looked really nice like the originals from Tour. And I also like my personal favorite is Sky Garden from the Game Boy Advance Mario Kart Super Circuit. Is it Advance Circuit? No, Super
Super
Circuit.
Circuit.
Yeah. So that was my favorite one, and it looks gorgeous in the new game. But let's roll it back a little bit. We got to talk about some things that already happened besides the Switch 2 teaser. We do have the Pokemon Presents. There was 19 minutes long. I don't think it was as bad as some of the previous year's ones. I wouldn't say it could have been an email like a lot of the previous Pokemon Presents. There was some decent stuff in there. I felt like the pacing was really good. They were kind of just moving on from one thing to the next, and we got about 6 minutes of that 19 minutes completely dedicated to Pokemon Legends ZA. I know there's a lot of disappointment that we didn't get like virtual console, virtual Nintendo Switch Online ports of like the classic games, but we do got to remember, you know, that this is the 29th anniversary. I guarantee you next year we're going to get something. So don't be disappointed this year. If they don't have it next year, then you could be disappointed because that's the big one. I firmly believe we'll get something there. They announced a lot of things. There's a new card pack in Pokemon Pocket TCG. That's the Arceus themed one. They show some new characters coming to Pokemon Unite. I don't really play Unite, so I don't remember what they were, to be honest with you. But they announced that. I think the one game I was surprised to not see out of all like the mobile stuff they had updates for was the Cafe Remix. They didn't have anything there for that one.
I forgot that existed.
I only know it because I always see it there, like in the Pokemon Presents. I'm like, oh, it's the time of year to get updates on Cafe Remix and to learn that it's still live and hasn't shut down yet. They announced, I think they announced like a community day or something for Go. They did. There was two big announcements, of course. We got the Legends EA, and then we got
Pokemon Sleep got one too, I think.
Pokemon what?
Sleep.
Yeah, there was an update for Sleep. Yep, yep, yep. I do remember that one. And one of the bigger surprises was the Pokemon Champions, which looks like a new gen Coliseum, not Coliseum, new gen Stadium or Pokemon Battle Revolution,
Yep.
and it looks to be like the place to do competitive battles. So, like, I joked during the live. I was like, "Oh, they're gonna announce Pokemon Battle Frontier Revolution." It's like Pokemon Battle Revolution, except you're in the Battle Frontier, and it like kind of came half true. And I was like, "No way." We don't know
I
what all
imagine
content's gonna be in it. It's gonna be a battle
we
sim.
don't. They didn't tell us anything really.
Nothing.
They just said, "Hey, you can
This
battle your
exists.
friends." But what's cool is that they did tell us it is console to mobile, which
And
is
mobile.
cool. Like, so
Yes.
you could be on mobile, you could be on console. They'll speak with each other. That kind of leads me to think if they have that kind of cross play, it's not really cross play because it's going to be, well, it sort
It's
of is
crossplay.
because it's a console to
That's
mobile.
fair to
It
call it that.
is, yeah. I would say there is going to be a chance. I would say a high chance that Nintendo allows you to either bring in your own Pokemon, just in case you have someone from Pokemon Emerald, you want to bring that Pokemon in competitively, or whoever, you could still do that, right? Obviously,
Well, they
there's
did say
certain
it's going to be
Pokemon.
compatible with home. They did mention that you can bring
Oh,
Pokemon
cool.
from home. I don't know if this was confirmed or just a rumor, but it was also stated that you can like generate your own Pokemon within the game, kind of like Pokemon Showdown. I
Yeah.
think that's more on the rumor side, but the one thing that did disappoint me, they didn't show this in that little trailer, But apparently, with the home compatibility, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Now you could finally have all of them there, and there's no excuse to not have any specific ones because it's all just focused on a battle sim. But they did mention it's going to have limited compatibility in terms of the Pokemon you can use in it, and that they're going to add more over time. And it's like, man, they just cannot get a release right. Like, we're going to be dealing with Dexit until the end of time, and it's so annoying. Like, what are we doing? You've had 8 years to import every Pokemon's model to the Switch. Why hasn't it been done yet?
So I will say this, okay, not to validate that kind of movement because I'm against not having, because you can have access to, you know, all the Pokemon. Look, all I'm saying is, back in the older days, I know there was less for us to have to deal with each generation when they brought in new Pokemon and included all of the Pokemon. But once we started hitting, 700 Pokemon and beyond, like maybe what I'm trying to say is it's going to be maybe a tailored kind of experience. Hey, you've got access to these mons. In phase two, you'll have access to these. But what would be cool is if they let us know like who would be accessible later, or if they dropped hints at that, or whatever it was, right? Like, hey, you can only use the Pokemon from these rosters. It's kind of like how they let us use certain legendaries, depending on the tournament and things like that, and how many of I don't know. I think
I'm calling copium.
I
I
just
don't. I. Here's the thing, man. When Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon came out, there was like 845 Pokemon. They got all of them in there on a 3DS cartridge with a maximum storage of like 4 GB. Like, the amount of Pokemon added to the total roster has grown at a pretty linear rate. The amount of storage we can fit into our games has grown exponentially since the original Game Boy days. So, like, I don't think that's a valid excuse anymore, especially when the whole reason they set things up the way they did is to be future proof. Like, when they first did Sword and Shield, a lot of those models were just imported from the 3DS games and then touched up on with new textures, higher poly counts, and whatever the case was. But a lot of the animations were the same. That was a big argument then, is, oh, they're focusing on new animations, and we saw that that didn't happen. It's like they're running out of like leeway or excuses. They've had an entire console generation to make this happen, and they still haven't. And it just, I don't know. Tailored experience and catered experience is cool, and having it focused is great, but this felt like the one game that they're like, all right, this is just a party of all Pokemon because they showed Dynamax as well as Megas in the same game. So it's like all of these generations gimmicks and Pokemon are going to be available, but then they still limit the roster. And it just feels arbitrary. You don't have to program like walking animations or anything because it's not an adventure. It's just essentially a battle sim. So I don't want to get too deep into
yeah,
this because, we got other stuff to talk about, but it just bothers me that this is the one game I thought for sure, all right, this is the one where we get them all. But
it does seem like it's more on the control side of things, and if there wasn't a reason for it, like, hey, we're cooking this, we're cooking that, you know, it's unfortunate, but yeah, it might actually be how things pan out. But I didn't even catch that Megas and Dynamax would be a gimmick in there, but no Z moves, right?
well, we don't know. Like that, I'm going to assume that like all of all of the gimmicks are fair game. I'm pretty sure they're going to have a way to have all of these in, and they may even have different modes where it's like, this is a Z moves only bracket, and you can only use Z moves, or this is a megas only, and I'm sure there's going to be like different, you know, versions or different rule sets, I should say, where you can have certain
Yep.
things, and then a free for all where all legendaries, all megas, all Z moves, all of them at the same time.
Can I have multiple of the same item, please? I want a full team of leftovers or EVO
No,
light.
you're not getting a team of sweepers all with life orb. Sorry, but that's not happening.
Focus dash. Um,
Mustache guaranteed
so
to live at least 12 turns.
yeah, right. Just a bunch of shit ninjas. Allow me to also have duplicate Pokemon, right? Um,
I mean, well, why
and
would you? If every Pokemon's in there, why would you need the same one twice? You know?
uh, and anything goes would be nice. Just can I have an anything goes bracket where like you could just play as anything, free for all?
what they're hinting at too. That's the big selling point where it's like, you know, up until now, like each generation's gimmick has been locked to that generation's
The
games.
game.
You know, if you're
Hmm.
not in Gen 6, you're not getting Megas. If you're not in Gen 7, you don't get Z moves. If you're not playing Gen 8, you're not getting Dynamax and Gigantamax. So I do think it's cool that they're finally finding a way to link them, and it also gives them a way to let you experiment and play with all of those things while letting each generation's games keep their identity, because that was their reason for not doing it. That's the reason they left Megas and Zemus behind, is because, you know, these games come out in such a short amount of time from each other. We wanted something to differentiate each generation besides just like the region and the Pokemon. So
Hmm.
it's a way for them to have their cake and eat it too. They can do all the experimental stuff where we get to play with it all together while still, you know, keeping things within each game. But let's look at some of the other announcements. This is my favorite announcement, and they did announce that we're finally getting new episodes of Pokemon Concierge on Netflix. I
They did.
loved Pokemon Concierge. I thought it was a really cute
Same.
show. I'm excited. I can't wait.
It's a wholesome show, and I think it deserves more attention. If you haven't watched Pokemon Concierge and you have access to Netflix,
4 episodes. Short watch.
really short, and it's great for like could be good for kids, could be good for family, could be good for anybody really. You don't have to be a Pokemon like crazy nerd fanatic. You could just enjoy it. It's just fun, very lighthearted, wholesome.
Yes, wholesome. That's a good way to put it. And it's a stop motion animation. It looks gorgeous, and it's got way more Dragonite than I ever deserve. So I'm extremely happy about that.
I think you were streaming one of the episodes, and
Yeah.
you kind of turned into a little like 10-year-old as soon as you saw Dragonite. You're like, oh my gosh! Like I'll
It
never
was like a
forget how
running
excited
gag.
you
I
were.
was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna be like super over the top every time I see Dragonite." But then they showed Dragonite like 6 times an episode, and I'm like, "Oh man, I didn't think we were getting this many. Like, this is just supposed to be a
Yeah,
joke."
yeah. Especially if you're a fan of Psyduck, you have to watch the show.
Yes, yeah. Psyduck gets a lot of love. I'm trying to think what other
What
announcements we
else?
got. I think ZA was really the last like big one out
Oh,
of Pokemon
Pokemon
Tour.
Za.
Za, yeah, Legend Za version. So, what are your thoughts on it? I've got several, but I want to hear your take before I go in.
Uh,
Your thoughts?
um, honestly, I'm trying to spin this as positively as possible because there are good things about it. I do like, but
Be
there's like
positive.
small
It's okay
things.
because we're gonna tear into it, and I know
So
you were very turned off by it. So let me get yours first. I'll probably be the more positive one here. It's okay.
yeah, I don't like that it seems like it's somewhat similar to the engine used in Scarlet and Violet, as you may already know if you're watching and you're into just news, even if you're not playing Pokemon games. They didn't perform very well. The Pokemon Scarlet and Violet games were like kind of hard on the to play on the Switch. Like you could play them, they were playable. I played through it, at least the main story. It's okay. But compared to previous versions, right? Compared to Sun and Moon, even I mean, Sword and Shield, it's more recent, right? Um, those are pretty smooth, man. There's no dropped frames. It's a turn-based game. Obviously, I know it's open world now, so it was just more ambitious than I think they anticipated. And with this game not being open world, and now it's just in Lumio City, I don't know. I expected a little bit more in terms of style, especially coming from Legends Arceus that we got before. It's fine if it's not the same art style, but I kind of wanted maybe a different art style or a unique one. Um, but I have a feeling we'd have to wait for a Legends game well into Switch 2's life before we got a different art style for a new mainline type Pokemon game. Anyway, but yeah, like little things, like um, yeah, I'm not a fan of like the zoned areas and the city, and kind of how
Feels
I don't know, it
claustrophobic,
just,
right?
Yeah, with all the buildings and the te low texture, like the coolest thing obviously is like the battles and stuff, and I'll let you talk about some of that exciting stuff, but like yeah, because maybe they try some stuff out here, people love it, they bring it into the other games, right? Um, I am a huge Johto person. I love Gen 2, as you know,
Mm,
but I don't care for the starters. The starter choice was kind of
they're
like
pointless. They're so pointless.
you have nine starters to choose from, like sets of starters to choose from, and you choose two from the same region. Like I said, I'll just keep repeating myself. I love Gen 2, which we have. I don't know. That could. I'm gonna stop.
Okay. Alright. So I will say this about the starters. In terms of who we got, I think it's probably the worst set of starters we've ever gotten. But we need to see the third forms. We know they're going to get regional forms. Typhlosion's regional form is amazing in Legends Arceus. So I'm willing to give them a little bit of grace until we see what the final forms look like. But right now, Totodile sweeps. I mean, the, come on. Embor, Meganium. Those are the other starters. Like, it's
Yeah,
very, very
the
weak.
the little dinosaur is the best one. But do you think it'll be regional, like you said, or do you think that they'll have megas, or will there be both?
It could be both. I feel like we could have both. I hope they don't just do megas because that would be really, I don't know, disappointing. Because then it's like, you know, well, here's the thing. I don't think we're gonna get just megas, and here's why. And there's actually some proof on it. In the trailer they showed, Chikorita used, is it disarming voice? Yeah,
Disarming
it
voice,
used
the fairy
disarming
type
voice.
move.
It's a fairy type attack move that it doesn't learn anyway in any of the games. So it's very likely that the regional variant for Meganium is Grass
Mm,
Fairy.
yeah,
I've
it
heard
could
some
be
other
both of
ones.
them.
I've heard some other ones floated around, like for alligator could be like water poison or water dark, which would be cool to complement the fairy typing, and then, or even water dragon. I would love water dragon. That would be so sick if they do that. We'll see. But again, I don't like the starters as they are, but that could change depending on what they show us for the third forms. But going back to what we were looking at just in the trailer, I think I think the biggest term for what we saw was just disappointing. I was so happy they let this game cook and delayed it, or just gave it more dev time for it to be as polished as it possibly could be, and for it to end up looking as basic as it did. Especially like you said, this is a closed. It's not meant to be open world. It's more closed off. It's in just one city, which I'm willing to give them a pass on that because they're going to make this one city massive. Obviously it's going to be bigger than what Lumios was in X and Y. So in terms of how much we get to explore, we'll see. But like, it looks so bland. At least
At
there
the
was no
same time,
frame drops. That I will give them that.
this, you know what? I'm realizing as we kind of unpack this town of a game under Paris, the catacombs, you never know if they unveil that
True.
under
They might have like an
Illumios,
under
it's
area.
like, yeah, because, yeah, so it might be like a Breath of the Wild thing, but hopefully there's actually shit down there. Not Breath of the Wild, Tears of the
Tears of the
Kingdom,
Kingdom. Yeah,
sorry.
I knew what you meant. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Oh,
agree with you.
man.
I think this is the first trailer we've seen. It's coming out later this year.
Yeah.
There's going to be more information that'll probably get us more excited. For me, it just looks very basic. I don't like that the buildings look like a sticker painted on the serve, sticker applied to the side of just a rectangular prism. It,
Flowers pasted
yeah,
on a wall. Like, yeah.
it's very underwhelming. I think the protagonists and rivals look great. I love the designs for them. It's
Yeah, they look good.
it's basically a sequel to X and Y. So this is the Z version we
Yeah.
never got. So those parts of it I'm excited for. And we got to talk about the
Mhm.
combat. That's the big hot button thing that they're building off of Legends Arceus, or I wouldn't even say building. They're emboldened to try different
Continuing.
things because of how well received Legends Arceus was with its, the fast and the heavy versions of attacks. It's full active time. So real time. Everything's real time. There's no PP. They just every move has cooldown. You have to aim them. You have to be your positioning and timing are much more important than they used to be. And it's funny. Someone mentioned, especially with the way the cooldowns look with the diamonds, it looked exactly like the layout for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And we're not going to get close to Xenoblade Chronicles 2 level of quality, but I do think this could be a really cool thing for them to do and just have a different way to experience the combat. Speaking of Xenoblade, I hate to bring this back again, but the reason I'm so disappointed is they've had an entire console generation to improve at squeezing everything you can out of the Switch. We know the Switch is underpowered, but that doesn't mean it can't produce good-looking games. And Xenoblade, I mean, it's a meme that they're compared to each other, and a lot of people get mad when you compare Pokemon to Xenoblade because it's different studios, blah, blah, blah. I get it. Monolith Soft is probably one of the most talented gaming studios in the world, and that's why they're constantly growing. But at the same time, we have examples of several Switch games that look gorgeous on Nintendo Switch. And the art style thing, I'm not. That doesn't really bother me. I don't think Scarlet and Violet's art style is bad. It's maybe bland and inoffensive. I think Sword and Shield with the cell shading looked a little better, but it doesn't bother me with the art style. It's just everything else around it. It looks so basic. I know it's a kids game, but I just thought this was the one time that we'd finally see, like, wow, they've really put their best foot forward and produced something. It's not going to look as good as other Nintendo games. Nobody expected to. Nobody's getting 4K Pokemon, 120 hertz variable refresh. No, we weren't expecting that. I just wanted something
Right.
that looked good. And here's the one olive branch I'll extend to them. From the trailers, there was no frame drop. So if it performs well and we have no frame drops, then I'll still be able to enjoy the game.
Yeah, especially if they're not like, hey, enjoy no frame drops only on Switch 2. Um, but
Speaking of
yeah,
Switch 2,
I
before you start, I have to throw this in there. I have to throw this in there. There are
yeah,
actually people online that were trying to say that the footage we saw, oh, that was obviously on a Switch 2. What?
there's nothing about it that looks Switch 2 next
Nothing.
gen or anything. No,
Nothing. If people
no.
are those are the same people that said that the new Mario Kart looks like it was running on Switch 1, which means, they don't but
Yeah,
that did not look next gen in any way, shape, or form. So
but
no, that was not Switch 2 footage. Sorry, go
going
ahead.
back to ZA, it's like pretty sure compared to Legends Arceus, we're gonna get held items in this Legends game because there's Mega Evolution, so there's gotta be held items,
No, not necessarily.
right?
I think someone saw in the clip that like all of the Z stones were in the bracelet at once. So it may be like a key item like Rayquaza's
Mm.
was for Rayquaza, and you don't actually
Ah.
physically have to have them hold it. So I hope that we do get held items just because it's another level of depth that is nice to have.
But but maybe it's easier for them to develop it without it, especially since they're coming up with this new action-based system. Maybe this will allow them, maybe that's what enabled them to be able to create it in the first place, where, hey, we already don't have items running in Legends. People are used to that. Instead of light and heavy, let's just have them cool down and whatever, right? Dodge, Pikachu.
Right, we finally get to do it just like we always wanted in the anime. So that's what's got me like excited. I think that the real time combat has the potential to be something we haven't seen in a Pokemon game, like something actually fun to play from a battle to battle basis. It's not just going to be press A to win, pick your best move. Like there's actual thought in every encounter that you're going to have to do, and it also has the bandwidth to allow for like higher skilled play. So you might be able to take on, you know, I don't know what they're going to call gym leaders. They're not gyms, but whatever like the area leaders are that are 15 levels above you if you're really good at the combat and can time things well and have good strategies around that. So that's another element that I think is going to be really fun to see how they develop and take advantage of the new combat.
Maybe that being said, they'll actually allow us to fight each other.
You know, I think there may be some PvP in here. They did kind of hint at that little
Maybe
splash at
it's
the
just
end.
local though, and I would be okay with that. Like if it was just like a local thing where that way they don't have to worry about, oh, this person's got latency
Yeah,
and they're trying to
exactly. That
dodge,
that could
that
be
kind
the
of thing.
compromise. Yeah.
That could be it. And I'm okay with that. If you have to, then you bring your friends over to your house and you guys are playing local like we did when we were kids because we were doing link cables stuff back then. So it's like to have that kind of come back, it's okay.
It doesn't cannibalize Pokemon Champions either if you do it that way. Think about all their
Yeah.
their avenues or all their revenue sources. I see Bear R in the chat. What's up, man? Pal World. Yeah, we gotta. Yeah, Pal World. Yeah, I love Pal World, but when you see Pal
Didn't
World
didn't
and what Game Freak
didn't
is
they
doing,
have they're okay, right, legally? Are they all right?
I mean, the game's still active and they're still updating it. So yeah, I assume so. I think the one thing they changed to like avoid the rest of the lawsuit was how sending out your PAL in a sphere, wherever you throw it, is where it comes out. So now by default, it just shows up next to you whenever you release it. So I think that something to do with the patent. I think that's what it was. Funny enough,
Uh,
based on Legends Arceus was that patent because when you send out a Pokemon,
um,
it comes out where you throw the ball.
oh, because it was different in the games, I guess, like up until that point. Like it was either off screen or maybe just showed up like not where it hit kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
you could control where it
okay.
comes out of the ball by throwing it in a specific spot.
Yeah, who'd you say was in the chat?
Bear R, and I think we had Dingo80. I see you as well. You were mentioning something about not so much storage space, but the processing power and coding to call for the ID and image and sounds once that Pokemon number climbs. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't even want to give Game Freak that level of grace because that's other monster collector games have had that figured out for years as well. And just going back to Xenoblade, I mean, there's a bunch of different monster types as well there that have significantly higher poly counts, significantly more intricate movement patterns and sound effects and things like that. I'm not saying it's not a challenge that they'd have to overcome, but it doesn't sound like an insurmountable wall that they couldn't figure out, especially when they limit the fidelity of their games and the ambition of their graphics to that point. Like,
Yeah, and mainly because they have a hybrid console
mhm.
to really think about, and they prefer better battery life.
Yeah. Did you Pokemon Presents before we take a quick intermission and then talk about Switch 2?
Not this time.
I think we got enough negativity out for that. So we'll be right back in about 5 to 10 minutes
Cool.
here, guys. Stay tuned. We're going to talk about the Switch 2 upcoming direct. You're going to get our predictions and all that good stuff. So don't
All
go
right.
anywhere.
We'll be back.
All right, we are back, everybody. Thank you for your patience. Had to take a quick bio break and get us refueled and ready to talk some more. So we've talked about the Pokemon Presents. We touched a little bit here and there on Nintendo Switch 2. I do want to briefly, before we talk about Switch 2, I do want to kind of talk about the thing that didn't happen. Uh, Everybody and their mother said that there was going to be a general Nintendo Direct in February for the Switch 1. Obviously, there wasn't going to be anything related to the Switch 2. They missed an opportunity. They had one last chance to say there will be no mention of the Nintendo Switch successor during this presentation. So, unfortunately, we didn't get that, but it just it breaks a pattern that has persisted since I believe the actual Switch reveal. I think that was the only year there was no Nintendo Direct of any kind in February, because we've had some minis and I think a couple partner showcases here and there. But this seemed like a good year to have one again as just kind of a send off for the Nintendo Switch 1. Like, hey, this is what you've got to look forward to if you're not quite ready to make the plunge for Switch 2. Here's what you can still play on your existing hardware. We didn't get
The
that.
3DS had that for sure.
Yeah, and they supported the 3DS for a while because
Even yeah,
it's a little different because they weren't sure how successful Switch was going to be. So they always
right.
like every time they do this, they always come out with a new console and like, oh, it's going to be our third pillar. We're not getting rid of this other thing.
It's
And
the family.
yeah, they're hedging their bets. They're because of what happened with the Virtual Boy, so they can't put all their eggs in the basket immediately. Whereas this, it's like, no, this is a successor. This is the new thing. If you want the latest and greatest, you got to get this.
You really went as far back to say Virtual Boy. I love that so much. But
I
you're
mean,
right.
that's what
It's
started
just
them. They
it's
thought
usually
that was going to be big.
it's the I said family because it's the family of systems.
Yeah.
So I doubt that they'll stop selling Switch ones when Switch
No,
2 comes out.
absolutely not. And we may even see a price drop to entice, fence sitters to go ahead and just settle for Switch 1 for a while. But we didn't get the direct, and that's disappointing. It just seems a little weird to me for them to go out this sad. We still have things to see on Switch 1. We still got Metroid Prime 4 is coming out, along with 2 and 3. We know 2 and 3 are already done and ready to go. They're just waiting for a rainy day to release those. So we got those. We do have Legends ZA, obviously, and of course the Pokemon Champions game. In terms of other games, I don't know if there's anything else that's confirmed, like from Nintendo themselves. But there was the leak of Kirby having a remake on the Switch. I think it was Planet Robobot, the 3DS game. So we're gonna see that at some point. And there's probably gonna be
That's a that's
other.
a that's a loved title.
Yeah, no, it's one of the better games, especially on the 3DS era. So it's cool to see that come back, kind of like the Donkey Kong Country Returns remakes.
Shout out to my childhood friend Will, who absolutely finds nothing but comfort in the times he's told me that he's played that game and he's recommended it to me. Have I played it yet? 100%? Absolutely not. Did I still do I still have to play Mother 3 entirely according to him? Yes. Will I play it someday? Hopefully soon. But yeah, more Kirby games for Switch. I'm always for it. Would you still want more stuff to be released for NSO?
I think that goes without saying, just because it's all going to be built upon on the Switch 2. They're not replacing anything. It's just the next thing. So we're still going to get stuff for Nintendo Switch Online. The well's starting to kind of run dry for games that they can put on there. So we're going to have to see some really big surprises to keep the thing fresh and make people want to subscribe if the existing games aren't doing it for them. So maybe we're gonna get some more third-party games, like going back to like the Game Boy, 30th anniversary
Mm.
Pokemon. Maybe we get the Gen 1 games next year and the Gen 2 games later to follow or something. Or Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy for the Super Nintendo. There's a lot of things that they could do with third parties if they can get them, because I don't know how that's going to work. They definitely want games on that service to be persistent. They don't want it to be like Game Pass where it's like rotating constantly. They want you to know, hey, you'll always have access to this once we add it, with the exception of that one was it a baseball game? There was some baseball or soccer game on Super Nintendo that they had to
Mm.
remove from the service, and it was like due to rights or something. But like that is literally the only game they've ever removed from Nintendo Switch Online. So yeah, I
Oh,
fully
I didn't know
expect
that.
that. It was a recent thing.
I
It
don't
was a couple weeks ago that that came out.
no, but not even that. I guess what I'm trying to say is I didn't realize that their service is the only one that doesn't take games off. Although I think Game Pass has like the only games they don't take off
First
are
party.
like their IPs. Like, yeah, exactly.
You'll always have Halo.
Um,
You'll always have
hmm
Call of Duty now.
Gears. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, those are safe bets. You'll always get to play the Xbox games, and the third party stuff will rotate, with the exception of I think with EA and Ubisoft. I think those are also partners with them, so like you'll always have access to those, and everything else is just cycling in and out. I mean, games. I don't want to talk too much about it, but I think Game Pass is still a great service, just because they are willing to make a lot of those deals to get some high-profile games. Dragon Quest XI being on there, Final Fantasy the 12 remake, the Zodiac Age. Like, there's a lot of like really great third-party games on the service, and they're usually there for more than long enough to be able to complete them and fully enjoy them. So it's still a good service even with that restriction, but that's just one thing Nintendo does have on the competitors is, yeah, like these aren't going anywhere. Once we add something to this catalog, it's always there. So we're probably going to see something along the lines of new third-party games as well as consoles. I mean, I don't think anybody has any doubt in their mind that we're going to get some new consoles on Switch. Maybe a Switch 2 exclusive thing. Maybe it's expansion pass exclusive. They're going to do something with DS or GameCube maybe.
GameCube. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. I was thinking that. Who knows? Would you think that we would ever get a Game Pass application on something like the next Switch?
I for a while I would have said yes. I think that makes a lot of sense, like especially on the Switch 1 where like a lot of those games couldn't run natively. But I think with Switch 2, I think that ship has sailed. If we were going to have that, I think we probably would have seen it by now. And now that all of those games are going to have more than enough headroom to be able to run directly on the Switch 2, I don't think Nintendo would want Game Pass on the Switch 2 anymore.
It's like just develop your game here because now we have more horsepower. Um, or maybe we'll finally get those modes, right? Like your console's docked. Now you have access to this performance mode. Something like that would be really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And I do expect Microsoft to have a bunch of games on their Switch too as well. So outside of Game Pass, they'll probably still have games for sale. I know the Master Chief Collection was one that's rumored for a while. Some Forza games, and we know Call of Duty's coming. That's another one. So outside of Game Pass itself as a service, Microsoft will have a pretty heavy presence on Switch too. But now that we've kind of talked about what we didn't get in February, we can move on to the big one, the Switch 2. And I do want to start off by mentioning this is just a prediction of mine. Because they didn't have a general direct for February, I feel like they're going to use the Switch 2 direct as, kind of a soft direct for Switch 1 as well. So like I feel like you're going to see a lot of at the end title screens, when they reveal a game and they show coming 2025 or whatever, you might start to see some logos of the Switch 2 and the Switch on there where they're just kind of like very subtly mentioning like, hey, you can also play this one on Switch 1. Because there's going to be games that probably will be cross-gen announced there. Maybe stuff that's been cooking for a while that was originally a Switch 1 game and they kind of built on it for a Switch 2 port. So
Yeah.
that is my first prediction. I think we're going to see a lot of games confirmed for both. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's probably already a a good amount. Because think about it, right? When the Switch came out, we had Breath of the Wild, and then we had very few other games because we didn't get Mario Kart till that summer, which was just a port anyway. And then we eventually got Smash, which was another, kind of way for people to just hop onto the console with Smash. Then there was Mario Kart, and just kind of wrapping it all up there with Breath of the Wild. You had all these different games, but they were all IP from Nintendo, right? It's kind of like with the Wii U's non-success, let's just call it that, where they didn't have a whole lot of third party, but they said that they would. With this console, I feel like we see the success of the Switch. There's probably a lot of firepower of games being built for this console. And they're probably going to go all in, I imagine, like with the third party stuff. Like, remember the Call of Duty uh, deal that was done? I think it was, they signed on to create games for Nintendo's new consoles for however long. So, like, that kind of stuff is just telling, like, with investors and people last year stating, oh, we saw Breath of the Wild running at 60 frames and like all these kinds of things. We don't know what games will come out, but I feel like we will get way more than we got the first year of the Switch was released. That's all.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't. I mean, the Switch's first year was incredible. I mean, they had a banger every single month from a first party standpoint. So I do think we're gonna get a slower first year from Nintendo, but this is gonna be one of those periods where they really lean on the third party support because there's gonna be a ton of it. We're gonna see things like Metaphor ReFantasio have a Switch 2 port. We're gonna
Hmm.
see the new Call of Duty have a Switch 2 port. We're gonna
Maybe
see
Persona 3. Maybe Persona 3
Persona
too.
3 Reload.
Another
Yep.
Atlas game.
Yep,
Yeah.
100%. I fully expect that to be there. When Final Fantasy, we could see. I know we're going to see 7 Remake on there and Rebirth eventually, but
You think
so.
so?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, we're going to see those on there. Maybe not right away, but we will see those on there. Final Fantasy 14. Maybe we finally get a native Nintendo port of 14 so I can play on my Switch. But
Well, we're thinking that that's going. They have a mobile version of that game coming out, so why not, right?
exactly. So I mean, we've I remember Yoshi P stating he wanted to bring it to Nintendo consoles like years ago, and I think it's just like the Genshin Impact port where they wanted to do it, but they didn't like what the results of it were as they were making it and decided to
Mm,
scrap it. But with Switch 2, they don't have to do that. So we're going to see a much healthier balance of first party and third party support, at least in the first year. But in terms of
I agree.
what we're going to see from Nintendo on the Switch 1, it's going to be a lot of like remakes. You're going to get your indie games. If Silk Song does exist and it's not vaporware, that will still come to Switch 1, obviously. But it, in terms of what we're going to see for Switch 2, let's talk about the hardware for a minute. We'll get back to the games in a bit because that's obviously the juicy part. Uh, actually,
But maybe the hardware will complement the games. The thing is, like, there's what if Nintendo respects a lot of the Switch One's releases still? Because remember, we said they'd still probably want to like sell Switch One consoles even
yeah,
with Switch Two out,
they're
right?
going to.
So here's the thing: it's not just hey, play the games in the past. No. What if there's obviously some games that bleed over where it plays on Switch One and there's a Switch Two version of it? What if with that new mouse kind of gimmick, at least that's what it appears there is. What if, because of that, now games will have certain games, maybe even games that are compatible or on both consoles, will have added functionality on Switch too, where it's like, oh, this is your reason for maybe buying it over here. Sure, you have gyro over there, but hey, you have, mouse support over here or whatever else that they add. I don't know. I'm just kind of saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's a safe bet to assume that anything they bring to Switch 2 that would be on Switch 1 will have something additional on there besides just higher horsepower, especially for games like Splatoon. You know,
Yep.
having a mouse for aiming with that.
That's a good idea. I never even thought of Splatoon because I don't play it, but that would really help.
Game like I don't want to say revolutionized. That's not the right word. I think that's the game that really brought gyro aiming in a shooter to the mainstream. Like after Splatoon did that, like you see a lot of other games that now have Doom, the Doom 2019.
Yeah.
The Switch
Yeah,
port of that has gyro aiming, and like there's so many other games that are implementing gyro aiming as part of its core controlling scheme. So yeah,
and that's the only place to play it, right? With gyro is Switch
I don't think so. I think there's other. Well, for Doom, yeah, I don't know if they have
for Doom.
gyro on. Yeah,
Yeah.
for that one specifically, maybe. But like
Yeah.
other games have actually added it as an option now because it's a requested feature. Now that like Splatoon has opened people's eyes of wow, this is a great
Mm.
complement to just the twin sticks and helps somewhat bridge the gap between keyboard and mouse players. But now with Switch 2, you could just be a keyboard and mouse player in certain games. But Bear, I see you. Breath of the Wild HD, here we come. I hate to burst your bubble, but Breath of the Wild's already HD. But we will see if they port it, a 4K version. We know back at like Gamescom 2024, behind closed doors, before the Switch 2 was officially announced, they were showing game developers Breath of the Wild running 4K. And I've, I mean, I would love that. I don't know if there's a lot of people that would rebuy Breath of the Wild at 2 years after Tears of the Kingdom came out, but that's another thing
Hey
we're gonna
man,
have to
I'd
talk about.
rebuy it if they gave us maybe some extra content too. That would be really cool. I know I doubt that they would do something like that, but I mean, like, who knows? I mean, we got extra content for the Mario Kart game. You never know. It's Nintendo, right? They could pull a Nintendo and be like, oh hey, there's this, or if you play, you get this outfit, or something like that. You know,
Was cool DLC for Breath of the Wild too. So I mean, if they bring it over to Switch 2, it's like it's a complete edition, definitive
just
edition,
included. We
as
never
you
got
play
a
games
definitive. We only
like
got
Switch 2.
Explorers, I think. Yep.
So I mean, something like that where it's like an all-in-one cart that runs 4K.
Yep.
We also talked about offline the possibility of like more options for performance versus quality. I know that's something a lot of the new games on like Xbox and PS5 have, where you could choose whether you prefer to prioritize frame rate or choose whether you prefer to go for the highest resolution for the cleanest picture possible. And that's another thing that could come into play. Yeah, that Breath of the Wild port was running at 4K on the Switch 2, but maybe it was only doing it at 30 frames a second, even with DLSS. But maybe there's also an option to run it at 1080p, 2K, 1440p, something like that. With DLSS, it can reach the 60 frames per second target. So I think that's something we can look forward to on Switch 2 is more games having that option where you can choose which path you prefer. I mean, me, I will always
Mm,
prioritize frame rate above
frame rate.
resolution.
I know. I know. You know what? Since we're talking about hardware, and respect to you because uh, now with a more updated TV, I can actually enjoy higher frame rates that are more stable. So I appreciate that and see where you're coming from. But speaking about hardware, we don't even know what kind of like is it going to be micro SD cards again? Sorry, I just said mini SD. That's a whole other format. Micro SD cards. We don't know if, and that's the one thing we might not get this with the Switch 2 is a faster speeds, right? Or am I wrong?
Yes. So this is something that was leaked long ago when they were first showing like the CAD renders of the console and everything. It's going to support micro SD cards, but it's also going to support the micro SD Express cards, which is the newer format that have higher read and write speeds. So the Express cards are a little bit more expensive than regular micro SDs, but instead of read write speeds of like 90 to 120 megabits per second, you're looking at like 600 to 800 megabits per second. I'm ballparking here, but that when I was looking for an Express card on Amazon to kind of prep for this, that was the general range of ones that I was seeing. So like it's 4 to 5 times faster. So they've basically confirmed that Switch is going to support both. How it does it remains to be seen. Maybe like you can still use regular micro SD cards, but they'll only allow you to run Switch One games. But Switch Express cards can hold
Mm,
both one and two, maybe, or they could just let it
mhm,
run off of micro SD and it just has longer load times. That could be a thing. But fully expect to see expandable
mm.
storage in that way. That's gonna happen for sure.
I didn't even know that about the SD cards. You kind of just opened my mind to that because you're saying that there's. How long has that been around? That tech, that advancement has that been around for a while?
I want to say the micro SD Express was
Hmm.
like launched in 2023, maybe 24. Oh, I lied. 2019 by various manufacturers such as Lexus, Samsung, and SanDisk. These cards typically have read
Oh,
speeds of around 985 megabytes per second and write speeds of 950, making them much faster
incredible.
than traditional micro SD, and their maximum
But they're
read speed of
expensive.
100. Not
Maybe they're
really.
cheaper now.
Yeah,
Maybe now, compared to 2019,
they're
we
definitely
might be looking.
more than regular SD cards, but it's not like significantly.
Mhm.
It's not like, Sony Vita proprietary memory card.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
So just to give you
Those are terrible.
a reference, so this isn't a Vita situation. So a 256 card right now, Express, you can get for $60 from SanDisk. So that's like retail price. Probably get one better deal on Amazon, but they're a little rarer. I haven't seen any like 1 terabyte ones, but they'll be affordable. It's not going to be break the bank type of stuff.
That's nice. With the SD card market, I'm super surprised. It's not like they're it's not like they're changing. Oh, look, guys, this SD card is not backwards compatible because it's a new kind of like now it's a
Not a new
circular
form.
card.
Yeah, So yeah, there you go. So we'll still have the expandable memory. Keeping on with the
Mhm.
hardware. You mentioned your new TV. That is also my new TV because we both got them. By the way, guys, if you haven't heard, I found a killer deal at Walmart a few weeks ago for a 65-inch LG OLED TV, the C3 series, which is one of the best TVs money can buy, on clearance, brand new in box for $800. So couldn't walk out of the store without getting that, and Soldier wanted one as well, so I ended up going back for the second one. And just could not believe they were sitting there that cheap. Those TVs on sale for a 65-inch, you can get them for $1,200 to $1,300, and that's considered a good deal. The MSRP is over 2 grand. I was kicking myself for not getting the one that Best Buy sold a few months ago for $1,000, and we found one for 800 right there in store. Don't have to wait for shipping. Get that instant gratification. So we've got fancy new TVs now. All that to say, these new TVs support HDMI 2.1, up to 120 hertz, 4K, great for gaming. It has both G-Sync and FreeSync available. And the reason I wanted to bring that up, besides bragging about finding the deal of a century, is that I haven't even thought of this before, like a couple weeks ago. What kind of frame sync technology will it support? It's a NVIDIA, so I have to, or NVIDIA, however you say it. I have to assume that if we are going to see some type of tech like that, it's going to be G-Sync. So is the Switch 2 going to support G-Sync? And in going a step further, will it also support up to 120 frames a second? I don't expect every game to support it or reach that, but will it have the option to output in 120 frames a second? What do you think?
I think so. Yeah. Um, I don't know. I kind of feel like this chip that Nvidia's coming up with Nintendo in-house is probably compared to what we got with the Tegra, we're looking at probably a very custom chip. And maybe this chip has some things, some extra, cards up its sleeve. Like maybe, you know, their API is able to access parts of it that third parties won't actually have access to and allows them to do certain things that are very Nintendo-y. Because if you've noticed, Nintendo's IPs have always been like the prettier looking game, and for good reason, right? It's exclusive to their console, so they should have better access. But now that this chip was built in-house, yeah, I think 120 would be easily achievable. Among other things, like I said, I don't know. Like, I'm hoping we get like 4K 60 on some games. That's really what people want at the end of the day.
And it kind of builds off of what we said before about performance versus quality. I mean, there's going to be some games that aren't as demanding that could reach that 120. I know someone mentioned that maybe Mario Kart, the new Mario Kart, is one of those games that allows you to play at 120. A racing game would hugely benefit from being able
Oh
to
yeah.
output it at 120. And again, if it does have G-Sync, which I'm honestly expecting, it's going to be an NVIDIA GPU, so it's going to have DLSS. We know that it's going to launch with DLSS 3, at least version 3 at launch, and potentially updated later. But it's going to have that frame gen, or not frame generation, but the upscaling with DLSS. So
Right.
why wouldn't it have G-Sync? It just seems like a logical next step.
Yeah,
And
we've had G-Sync, so yeah.
and here's the thing. for those games that have the 120 hertz mode, the 120 frames a second, it doesn't even necessarily have to consistently reach that. It just has to target it. With G-Sync enabled, if you're getting at least above 60 frames a second, you're still going to get a great experience targeting 120 because as it shifts, it's going to change the frame rate of your TV with it. So like it's a continuous experience. It's a seamless experience. You're still going to get the benefits of aiming higher than 60 hertz and being able to see a really smooth picture. And again, I'm always going to target frame rate over resolution if given the opportunity. So I will 100% love that. So like indie games, a lot of indie games you'll be able to see at 120, easily clear that. Here's another thing. We don't know what they've got cooking for backwards compatibility with the Switch One. We speculated on our last podcast that
Hmm.
maybe they're going to have a way to use the docked profile of the original Switch One in handheld mode on Switch 2 to get that 1080p image. Because I think it's pretty much universally accepted that it's going to be a 1080p screen, which for the longest time I argued against. I said, there's no way. Why would they do that? 720 is fine for portable. But I'm a believer. I think it's going to be 1080p. And so for portable, yeah, that's great. You get to use the docked profile. But what about something extra for when it's docked? Maybe that's where you do see certain games be able to reach 120 frames per second from Switch 1 games. It's got the headroom. The power difference is there to where if they really wanted to, if Nintendo wanted to put the effort to make a patch for these games, to run on Switch 2 and take advantage of the extra hardware, there's a ton of games that would instantly benefit and easily be able to hit that 120 frame a second mark just with an unlocked frame rate.
And I think that's what we're going to see a big benefit coming from games that are in-house, like any of the games, really. Just think about it, right, for a moment.
Super Mario Odyssey, 120
Imagine,
frames.
I was thinking of Odyssey first, so I'm so happy you said that. But just how when we went from PS4 to PS5, and there was like a $10 upgrade for
Yeah,
like the Crash Bandicoot 4 game, and like other games, like you could just upgrade your PS4 title to the PS5 version. But some places didn't offer that, or some places gave it to you for free, and you were like, "Oh, cool! I'm so happy I have this game, and I have a free upgrade." I actually think Nintendo is going to give free all-around upgrades for all of their IPs because
it's a good way to
they
sell
don't lose
hardware.
any, they don't lose anything.
Nope.
They get you to go, "Oh, that fancy new one has free upgrades, and they're always free." And they added this, this, and this. That's great. Oh, it plays better, but also like there's maybe there's extra content. Maybe it's just the best way to play it. Whatever it is, I think them saying free will be a really good way for people to just buy it because they know they don't have to worry if it's $10 or if it's free.
Let me throw this at you. Okay, building off of that, because I like where you're going with this, because free is great, but free doesn't keep the lights on. What if they offer it as like an upgrade purchase and it ties it to your account with the Nintendo account? We all know that's backwards forward compatible. They're going to carry your Nintendo account over. But what
Hmm.
if, in addition to being able to purchase it, they include those patches as an additional benefit to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass? That you're expanding
Mm.
the games you already own. So if you have the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass, you automatically get access to all of those performance upgrade patches for Switch 1 games. And think about it, that allows them to drip feed the content. So kind of like with N64 how there's like one game drop every month. Maybe there's a new game that has a patch for Switch 1 on Switch 2 every month and it you can buy it or it's included with the expansion pass as a way to get people to upgrade from that $20 a year to the $50 a year. I can totally see them doing that because you get the best of both worlds. If you already have the expansion pass, then it is free to you. But if you don't have it, it's an incentive to upgrade, or you could just buy it a la carte if you don't want the Nintendo Switch Online. What do you think of that?
I like that version more than not getting it at all. Like unless you're paying for the online, because there's going to be people that maybe they just don't care about the online. Right now, they can't afford it, but they do want to play their game in a higher fidelity or whatever if it's backwards compatible and they offer that. I think that's great.
Options is
in
always great. Give people the
options
option.
is always great, but man, I don't know. I just don't see them doing that.
No.
Just because we haven't been able. No, knowing Nintendo, if they do paywall it behind Nintendo NSO, I just think it'll just be NSO, or you don't play those games at higher fidelity. You just play them in their backwards compatible mode,
Mhm.
where you just play the games and that's it. I do hope that it doesn't come to that, but I can be hopeful.
Yeah,
Um,
it's fair. They
we'll,
could do that,
we'll
but
see. Yeah,
we don't know what their approach to backwards compatibility is yet. But I think that
we
would be an
don't.
awesome way to give you, like, it gives you an additional source of content for little effort. So between your big Switch 2 releases, whether it's first or third party, having those drops, every month. So this month, we're getting Super Mario Odyssey with an upscaled patch. Or in the next month you get Xenoblade Chronicles 2 with a patch. Just having a way to like slowly trickle, because they're not going to all happen at once. It is going to take at least a little bit of effort to make these patches happen and test them and make sure they work and don't break anything. I know with Breath of the Wild, when modders were trying to get that 60 frames a second in, emulators, they had to really do some tinkering because it would break the game if you did that because the frame rate was tied to the engine. So there's going to be some work to make these
Hmm.
patches work. So like spacing them out and having some way to get something for doing that for our customers, like with the Nintendo Switch Online, is a
Yeah,
good way for them to also make money off of it and
get something
justify it.
off of it.
Yeah, just
Yeah, no, that
justify
makes
the effort.
sense. Justify the effort. Keep it going, right? Like it's helping support them so that they can bring more to us. So I mean, like it's a whole cyclical thing. Um, what about what about a backwards compatibility? I know we touched on that on our last podcast episode. Do you think do you think that's going to be pretty much just everything works
Yeah,
except Labo?
I think so. I mean, there's no reason for it not to. And I know a lot of people were doom posting about it because they said, "Oh, they said not all are compatible," and I'm like, you're gonna be fine. There's games that use the IR camera on the old Joy Cons. There's no IR camera on Joy-Con 2, so you won't be able to use that for your 1-2 switch, the sandwich eating mini game or whatever it was. I think someone mentioned a Resident Evil game allows you to reload by like covering it with your palm, which is a neat way to implement it, by the way. I think that's super
Wow.
cool. But I mean, all of those things could be implemented with a button press as well, or it's just too gimmicky to matter on Switch 2. And there's even then,
Hmm.
there's still workarounds for some of those experiences. So, talking about Nintendo Ring Fit Adventure. So obviously the
Yep.
Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Cons aren't going to work on it, but there's absolutely nothing stopping you from pairing Joy-Con ones to your Switch 2 and then just playing it that way. So I honestly don't expect there to be a large cache of games that just don't run on the Switch 2. It's just going to be those gimmick games, honestly.
The thing is, dude, there's enough Joy-Con out there in the wild, and they're gonna still sell Joy-Con.
Right.
Like as long as the Switch is being sold, the first one, you're gonna be able to pick up Joy-Con. And if you want to play those games the way they were originally intended, if they require the IR or whatever, you'll go back and you'll play those with those controllers. And it's not that many, like you said, right? It's just those fringe releases that actually used them. And plus, we've got new functionality that's coming out with the Joy-Con 2. And hopefully we've got better, more reliable sticks.
Yeah. I think Hall effects is a sure thing. We're getting Hall effect sensors. And you mentioned as well with, pairing Switch 1 Joy-Cons to Switch 2, we don't know the pricing on anything. So if Switch 2 Joy-Cons are $100 a pair, you could feasibly buy Joy-Con ones as a player to controller set for games that may need motion, whether it's like the WarioWare or something that could use motion. Like they're still going to be selling Switch One consoles and accessories. So having that interconnectivity allows them to do that. Where maybe instead of spending $100 on another pair of Switch 2 Joy Cons, if it's just for player twos on motion games, let's just spend 70 and get a pair of Joy Cons for the Switch One. So there's that. Since we're staying on the topic of hardware, I do want to go back to the screen a little bit here. Do you think Nintendo even mentions the screen of the Switch 2, whether it's the resolution, the frame rate, OLED versus LED. Do you think they even, because Nintendo's not one to talk tech specs. That's usually
No.
something they leave in like a press release or a thing on the website. Usually they don't heavily focus on them. Do you think they even talk about that in this direct? I
It's
feel
hard to
like you have to
say.
at least mention the resolution, right? I think you have to at least say,
I
oh,
think
it's a
look,
crisp
look.
1080p screen.
I think with regard to the screen, like you said, or just say the word 4K, dude. 4K is now everybody's got pretty much 4K televisions, just about. Like I
Yeah,
would say probably 80 to 90% of the population is running 4K televisions now, which is crazy because the last time we got a mid-year refresh for a console generation, I'm looking at you, PS5 with your PS5 Pro and Xbox
God.
Series X. We don't know, but with the PS5 Pro, right, compared to the PS4 Pro, PS4 Pro came out at a time where we were starting to ramp up as society with 4K TVs. So
Yeah.
that definitely helped out the PS4 Pro sales.
Hmm.
With the PS5 Pro and those failing sales now compared to when it released, only enthusiasts really bought that console. Compared to where the Switch 2 is coming out, it's like I feel like 4K is what they'll aim for. And obviously it'll play everything below 4K, but 4K will be like a big and you know, I'm not saying the PS5 Pro should have said, "Hey, we're going to do 8K," but it doesn't do higher resolution,
No.
and resolution is pretty important. If you're going to tout that your console is as powerful as it is, bring up something that is on paper that is scalable. That's something you can measure and go, "Oh yeah, my TV says it's to 4K. I can go up to 4K. Oh, this console goes up to its maximum. Great. Oh, it's portable too." Even better. And that's kind of the whole point with the Switch 2 is, hey, we're better than the Switch 1 and it's measurable and it's easy to
Exactly.
see that.
There's a
Yep.
metric. I love that you said that. There is an actual metric with a number on paper to quantify just how big a leap this is. Switch 1, 1080p. Switch 2, 4K. You're getting 4 times the resolution at 1080p. On paper, it's at least 4 times as powerful. So I love that. And I like you mentioned the PS4 Pro because if memory serves, I don't think the base PS4 could output games at 4K. It did have 4K output for Blu-ray, but I don't believe any game had output higher than 1080p. So
It
the
only had
PS4.
HDR patched in the middle of its life.
Gotcha. And that's not relying on resolution. So that's just a separate
No.
feature, which was nice to have. But, the
Yep.
PS4 Pro came out at a time where everyone wanted to start taking advantage of their 4K sets. Most people still, even then, probably 70% of the population had 4K TVs because it got to the point where that's all TV makers would sell. If you wanted less than 4K, you're getting like a 32-inch or a 40-inch. So
Yep.
the PS4 Pro was a more, I guess, relevant upgrade in that generation than the PS5 Pro is because it did allow 4K output. The amount of games that could take advantage of it obviously were limited, and it wasn't as like, the games weren't as detailed as what PS5 outputs, obviously. But the fact that you could visually see the difference between a game running on PS4 Pro versus PS4, that's what you're going to see from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. You're going to see an actual leap that it is easy to tell on screen with your eyes, but also easy to explain to the consumer jumping from a HD to 4K picture.
Exactly. And everybody knows what 1080p is, and they're gonna know. Oh, wait, it's going. The portable experience is even better. And there's some people that just play portably. Haven't there been polls done where people like there's numbers out there where
Yep.
it's like, oh, actually it's like a 50-60 or like a 60-50 or like it kind of swaps where it's like, dude, handheld for Switch is pretty big. I think I don't know. Do you know any do you have any any numbers in your head? I don't remember any off the top of my mind outside of the ones I just said, but I don't know if it is higher on docked versus handheld.
So there was a poll that came out in 2022 that said I I believe 30% of all Switch users have their gameplay primarily in tabletop or handheld mode. 18% primarily used it in TV mode, and then the remaining, what is that, 52% played in both modes. So the handheld is definitely a priority because it's where most of their users are playing. So I mean, 82% of Switch users either play in both most of the time or only play portably. So the portable experience is hugely important. So we talk 4K, 4K. That's great for the TV experience.
Yeah,
Obviously, we're not getting that in the handheld. So let's talk about the scalable nature of it. I think we're pretty much in agreement. It's going to be a 1080p screen, right?
I think so.
And I think we also agree that there's going to be G-Sync available when it's docked. Do you think the screen will support variable refresh rate, whether it's G-Sync or just a native refresh rate, variable refresh rate? Do you think the
Yeah,
screen in
absolutely.
portable will have that? You do.
Oh, in portable?
Yes.
Oh, in portable.
It's tough. I because they're always
It's
looking to
hard to
cut
say.
costs, but at the same time, they
Yeah.
want the portable
Only
experience to be good.
if there was like a pro, and I know they're not going to do this, but only if there was like a pro version of the console that was a little more expensive at launch, where you can get like a standard one, and then maybe one that supports. Hey, for those that are enthusiast about handheld,
Yeah.
you can get a docked kind of experience with ALM or something like that, and it's only available, or it's available in portable along with whatever monitor supports it. Um, or maybe down the line they come out with like an XL version, even though it's going to be kind of big, and I don't know. I just feel
That's a
like
chunky console. I don't.
it is pretty big.
If anything, I could see they're doing like a pocket version, but I do agree with you that because I don't think it's gonna be an OLED screen. I think that dream is dead. As much as I would love an OLED
Yeah,
screen, I do
yeah.
think it's reasonable to expect 2 years from now a Switch 2 Pro, or
Hmm.
where it's it has an OLED panel, so it's gonna look gorgeous, but it also supports the bells and whistles with the G Sync and the HDR. And this is my next question to you: do you think the screen of the Nintendo Switch will be a higher refresh rate panel than 60? Do you think we could get a 90 hertz like the Steam Deck OLED, or even a 120 hertz panel on the launch Switch 2? So obviously, if there's ever a Switch 2 Pro, that's probably a given. But do you think the launch Switch 2 will have a higher than 60 hertz refresh rate? Let's assume it's LCD or
Uh,
IPS, right? So it's probably not going to be OLED. If they do, cut that cost and put an IPS panel on there, do you think they support it with a 90 or 120 hertz screen?
Honestly, I really do hope Zero. It's my biggest hope. I wish that I'm not trying to change the topic too much, but just looking at Apple right now, I wish they had. I keep saying this over and over. For the last 2 to 3 years, I've said it, and anybody watching right now and who has an iPhone, I wish they not invented something, but coined a term for 90 hertz. Call it whatever you want to call it. Fancy. I had a terminology I used. I made up for it, but 90 hertz is nice because then they can go up to that, right? Doesn't mean it needs to hit that, but if it does, man, 90 hertz is so smooth still. It's really good.
Yes.
Like, I remember using it on mobile with like Android phones that reached it. Like, I think the Google Pixel 5, Google Pixel 4, I think some of the other like
The One
5A or
Plus,
6A,
the One Plus 2
7A.
had a 90 hertz
Oh,
panel.
yeah. Right. A lot of budget, again, budget devices that are obtainable by the general population have 90 hertz, man. So it's like,
I don't
I
think it's
think it
too
all
tall to
comes.
ask. I'm
I
with
think
you.
it all comes down to how will this benefit our games and for them, right? Like obviously that means games will have to be like not change. Like here's the thing, right? On desktops we have screens that are going up to 144, past
240 even.
that 240. So it's like it's definitely possible. I think that would be another reason to buy it and be happier that we don't have OLED, right?
That would
Uh,
be a good compromise.
because
If that were the
yeah,
case, if we're getting a 399 console that, while didn't have OLED, still gave us 90 hertz or 120 hertz 1080p screen with variable refresh rate in there, I would be happy with that. I would even be comfortable paying more than 399 for that. Those features to me are probably worth more than just OLED straight up, because you can still have a gorgeous looking LCD screen, and there's still talks of like QLED or mini LED for the Switch 2 screen. So you can still have a good vibrant picture without going all the way up to OLED. But those other features, I think, are a much bigger impact, because how does it benefit the games? It's a very obvious benefit if you can get higher refresh rate or variable refresh rate for a smoother experience. A lot of Switch
Yeah.
1 games struggled with performance. Even targeting 30 frames per second, it would struggle. So,
And these are games that are available on other consoles that do offer some of those extra little bells and whistles. It's a toggle in a setting. It's not like they have to redesign something, you know. It's something that's already typically available. It's just not, it's usually disabled for Switch because it doesn't offer it. But you spoke about price just now, and honestly, I don't know why. It just happened in the last like 30 seconds when you spoke about price, 399, and you'd pay more. When you said that, I thought, man, I could see 429 being the sale price for the Switch 2. I know it doesn't sound like right off the bat like how many people would buy that, but here's the thing. I don't know.
unless
I
they had
think they're
multiple SKUs. I don't think they use a number that ugly
but
unless there's
remember,
multiple.
we do have multiple SKUs. We have the Switch 1. So think about this, right? The OLED is 349 right now.
Yes.
So think about this. I highly doubt the new console is going to be just $50 more. Obviously, yes, those prices will scale downward as the new one is released. So that way it's like, hey, if you were thinking about OLED, just $50 more and you'll get the new one. But I don't know. I look, man, I look at companies like this, like Nintendo even, they're very greedy people, okay?
And they
And
always
it's
sell
not
their
that I,
consoles a profit. They never take a loss on them.
yeah, and they'll even take a loss later. They've done it before where they just, you know, I think the 3DS came out at 250
Yeah, they
before it
had to
was sold.
immediately slash that. So that's another thing. They do have
Yeah,
history with being too ambitious with pricing and having to scale it back to save their console. So I understand they are, I don't want to say greedy, they just never like to sell hardware at a loss. I 399 feels like the sweet spot. I feel like depending on the tech that we're actually getting in this thing, if it's a 1080p LCD screen, 60 hertz panel, no variable refresh rate or anything like that, I don't see them charging more than 399.
it could
Honestly.
be. What you would say the OLED becomes 299 then?
So if there's OLED on the Switch 2, or like, are we talking
No.
like years from now, like a new revision?
Switch, no, Switch 1. I'm talking about what about now with the Switch 1?
Gotcha. Yeah, I think those probably take a price cut when the Switch 2 launches. So
Hmm.
that drops to 299, basic Switch 249, and maybe the Switch Lite goes down to either 149 or
149.
179, something like that.
Hmm.
I could totally see that happening. But I just they they always like to be seen as the console of value. The console of we're affordable, but you get great experiences for your money. And they make up for it in their software
Yeah.
sales. They're selling
I would
$60
say,
games 5 years after
you know,
launch.
you're right. I would say I'm on board with that train of thought mainly because right now you can get a PS5 for 399.
Yeah,
You
they
can
can't go
get an
higher than that.
Xbox. They can't because of as much as they try to say they're not, console warring each other. Um,
They're still
it's
competing for shelf
competition. It's still
space.
competition. You're competing. The consumer's competing, right? With by making a choice. What do I want in my household, right? It's like how cheap is a Series S right now?
It's on cheaper sale for like 249. So, and that's why I'm like, I don't see them doing 449 unless it's like a premium SKU. I doubt they'll ever do this
Oh,
on
I said
launch.
420. At first, I said 429.
I
Sorry.
still think that's too much, because
I
like
know.
you
I know.
mentioned,
I know.
399 is the entry to PS5 with the discless.
Hmm.
Series
Hmm.
X, even you can get Series X. They go on sale for 449, 399 sometimes. So you have to consider that this is a portable console too. A consumer may not necessarily want
Hmm.
to spend more on a portable console than they could the most current gen stationary console. So it's a fine balance they have to strike between the upgrades in the tech and everything that we as consumers want. We're also like a very small niche within the community. Not everybody's going to care about things like VRR, OLED, or 90 to 120 hertz. So they have to sell to everybody else first. So I think what they're going to do is have a more basic SKU at launch, a 60 hertz panel, LCD, 1080p. I do agree it's probably going to be 1080, not 720. And then maybe 2-3 years from now, that's when we get our true like enthusiast device, as the PS5 Pro is described by Sony fans. We're going to get a $500 version of this console that has all of the bells and whistles we want, the highest possible quality in screen with the highest refresh rate that you can pack with that processor. And maybe they also include a more powerful CPU and GPU at that time that can run games a little bit better as well. So those are all things we have to consider at launch. As much as I hate to say it, none of that cool stuff is going to be there. I think we will get VSync, G-Sync on the docked experience, because that's just kind of an expectation with
Mm-hmm.
NVIDIA GPUs, but I think that's as far as they go.
I agree with you.
Let me ask you this. Since we're talking
Hmm.
hardware, this is something we haven't really discussed, and we know that Switch 1 stuff is going to be back forwards compatible with Switch 2. Do you think we get a new Pro controller for the Switch 2? And if we do, is that something they reveal in this direct? Because we are supposed to be talking about this direct specifically. So
Yeah, and we are. This is all applicable.
yeah,
Um, a new Pro controller. I don't know. I think so.
I think they
Yes.
show it. I agree. I think they
Um,
show it.
and you know what? I want to thank Sony, because
Why?
Sony's the one who's pioneered the
The touchscreen?
DualSense, which is no, the DualSense with it being
Mm,
as haptic as it is with games that actually use it, and boy oh boy, when games use the haptics in the DualSense, it is very impressive. Um, and that's what haptics should feel like in a controller. And I don't know how they'll do it and what they'll introduce, but I do hope whatever the Pro controller has, I hope it has really good battery life. I mean, the Pro controllers we have now
generally
are
do.
really good. Yeah, and they've been great at that, but um, is it the form factor? Is it going to change slightly? Is it the haptic feedback? Is it something else that we get that it's able to do? Is it a bit more accurate? Is it like a Wiimote 2 or whatever, Wiimote Plus, right? Um,
Let me throw a curveball at you.
okay.
What if, because there is redundancy with the Switch Pro controller, what if they make the Switch 2 Pro controller like really out there? What if they make like a miniaturized version of the Portal where it has a small touchscreen in the middle between the handles for potentially like DS games or something like that? Like something really out there where it's like, well,
Like the Dreamcast VMU
yes,
almost.
exactly, just like
Yeah.
that, where like games will be like, oh, by the way, if you play with this, you can also have like a HUD or a mini map down there, and a way to integrate DS play or Wii U
Again,
games.
again, if you can, oh yeah, that's a cool idea. Call it the Pro 2 controller. If you can convince me that the battery lasts still with those extras, okay,
Dude,
I'm
the
okay with
the
that.
3DS has, what is that, like a 1300 milliamp hour battery?
Is it that big?
Yeah, I mean that's relatively small nowadays, but like they
I know,
share
but
the
I
same
just didn't.
battery as the Switch Pro controller. So, you're not going to get 20
Oh,
hours with the screen, but you could reasonably expect 3 to 5 hours with the screen on. And since it's one screen instead of two, you know, you could see it, I could see them squeezing a 10-hour battery life out of that, especially because it's going to be a little bit bigger because you got to make room for that touch screen. And there's your haptic, your dual sense. You have an actual touch screen there. It doesn't have to be big. You don't want to make it unwieldy, but like a nice 4.5 inch
small.
screen
Yeah,
right there with that
exactly.
little
It's just
area.
stats. It's stats. It's whatever game wants to use it, where it's just like, how many lives you have left, a little mini map,
Yep.
um, and just little
Select games that
things.
support it. Obviously,
Yeah.
that's a niche feature, but it would be so Nintendo to have something like that, where it's like something
It
nobody
is.
would even think of, you know?
Yeah. And
But
it's
that
very Dreamcast.
but then also maybe not many people would use, you know what I mean? Like it's so weird that developers don't put
Yeah.
much effort into doing it except Nintendo themselves. But
Well, think about the mouse with the Joy-Con. Look, that sounds great for Splatoon and Call of Duty when that comes over and it becomes a normal thing. That's awesome. But how many people are actually going to use it, right? Because then there's also like
that's the thing. The
how
people that buy
it's
it
an
are the ones that are going
yeah.
to use it cuz if you didn't want to use it, you
Well,
could just buy a Switch 1 Pro controller.
it's true.
So cater
It's
to the
true,
niche
especially
that would actually buy that. You know what I mean? Like
if they're backwards compatible. I guess what I would be afraid of is if they come out with Switch Switch 2 games that are only playable with a Switch Pro 2 controller,
I think those will be
and
few and
they're
far between, bro. Because think about it. If you're in portable mode, you don't have that screen. So it has to be playable in both modes. So anything they do with that would have to be optional, unless the only ones that are exclusive to that would be like Nintendo's DS, Nintendo Switch Online, where you do need the second screen
mm,
to make
okay,
it
that's
work.
fair. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, at that point, you don't have a choice.
Or what about this? You know how they sold the classic controllers on my Nintendo with the Nintendo Switch Online membership, the NES, SNES, N64?
Mm-hmm.
What if that controller is one of those where you have to already have the membership to buy it because you're going to be the only ones that
Uh,
would be able to take
play
advantage of
those.
it? You know what I mean?
That's true. There could be something like that. I mean, there's that's something else to touch on, huh? How many controllers do we have access to on the Switch? And
A
how many of those are going to just be accessed again on the Switch too? They don't have to do a lot, to be honest, man. It's really just the Joy-Con. Because let's be real, like for a moment. It's not that we won't get a Pro 2 controller. Maybe we do. I actually don't know if we'll get it right off the bat. Like maybe they just revise the Pro and just call it the Pro 2 and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's better battery life. It's an extra 10,
Also
12
works on the Switch
hours.
1 too, maybe. You know, like it's just a
Eh,
universal type of thing.
exactly. They just like almost maybe they just stop selling the Pro 1 and they just call it the Pro 2 and then they just go with that and they just sell that and it becomes like the new
Or
Pro controller.
new Nintendo Switch Pro controller. You know, it's got the new LED.
No,
I'm just saying, man, if it's going to be universal like that, they're going to phase out the old one.
it's
That way it
true.
doesn't have a
They could do
2.
that.
You don't confuse
Mm,
your market by saying, "Oh, well it can only work on 2." If it works on Switch 1, just call
right.
it new Nintendo Switch Pro controller.
Can't call it 2 if it's for 1 as well.
Yeah, you know, like
Um,
something like
could be
that.
confusing. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to however they accept, you know, the backwards compatibility of all those controllers, and I'm sure it'll
Probably
be a lot.
easy to do. It's probably paired the same exact way.
Do you
I
think the
don't anticipate.
GameCube? Do you think the GameCube controllers will work
Yes.
with the Wii U
Yes.
adapters still? Dude, us using a
100%.
Wii U adapter 10 plus years is
Right.
crazy.
Technically it's not even a Wii U adapter anymore. It's just GameCube controller adapter. You know, like
I
I don't see
know.
any reason why it wouldn't support that. So
Hmm.
100% I expect that. So I think we had a lot of really cool stuff to talk about with the hardware, including some things that were a little bit out there. But let's talk about this direct in terms of the games. Let's talk about predictions, what we expect to be revealed, and I also want to know your thoughts on what's one game that they will reveal that will be the day one game. What's the game that this is going to launch with the Switch 2? This is your system seller. You will buy a Switch 2 to play, well, not you, but like consumers will buy a Switch 2 on launch day to play this game. We already know Switch 1 was Breath of the Wild and it sold gangbusters. 30, I think it's like 35 million units life to date sold, easily the highest selling Zelda game of all time. I think it actually beats all other Zelda games combined, excluding Tears of the Kingdom, which also sold another like 22 million. So let's start with what games are going to be revealed. Let's start there. Do we get our 3D
We
Mario?
touched we touched on it before, and yeah, exactly what I was gonna say. You got it. That's the Mario. Now, here's the issue with that, right? With Zelda, we had it on Wii U, albeit not a lot of them, probably not a lot of copies sold on the Wii U for Breath of the Wild. But you could get, if you had a Wii U and you didn't have enough money or couldn't find a Switch and you wanted to play that Zelda game, you could if you just got the Breath of the Wild copy
Hmm.
on Wii U. Sorry, I didn't say that right. Wii U Breath of the Wild version. Yeah.
I get you.
So with with a new 3D Mario, it's like
Do you think that's one of those cross-gen type of games?
I don't know, and it's difficult to say right now because here's the thing, they don't want to
They don't want to coddle the
they
Switch
want
One too much. You want to have a reason to
they
buy
do, right.
the new
And there's
Mario.
not really because the Switch is already a seller, like a
Yeah,
really best-selling console, it's like
that's
they
150
don't
people, 150 million people you can sell to instantly without them needing new hardware. So, yeah, there's a balance. That's why Pokemon. You're probably
it's
going to see new Pokemon games on
yeah.
Switch One, at least till the end of
Hmm.
2026. I think.
I think so. Uh, I think before that, I think we'll probably get Gen 10 like end of this year or wait, wasn't Arceus end of this year? Or I'm sorry, not Arceus,
Yeah,
Legends?
late 2025. But what I'm
Yeah,
saying
so
is,
I think we'll get Gen 2 Switch 2 only. Or I'm sorry, Gen 10 Switch 2 only spring of
spring.
next year. Yeah, I think so.
That's okay. That's pretty sudden because Pokemon historically has always supported older hardware even once the new console's out. I mean, famously, Pokemon Black and White 2
Right
came
too.
out while
Yeah.
the 3DS had already been on market for several months. So I don't know. I don't think they'll be that quick to jump ship to the new console. If anything, that could be a cross gen
Mm, true.
situation. But going back
You're
to the
right,
3D
you're
Mario,
right.
I fully expect 3D Mario. I don't
Mm,
think it's Odyssey 2. I think it's going to be a new experience, whatever they decide
me
to
too.
do.
Me too. Yeah.
But let me get your predictions here. Do you think it will be cross-gen? Will there be a standalone Switch 1 version of the game customers can buy for the new Mario? Me? I'm going to
I
say
don't
no.
think so. I don't think so, yeah. It's just because I'm with you on that because it's like they need this thing to sell, man. If they have the Mario game and anybody and their grandma can get it on their Switch Lite, like who gives
Yeah.
a rat's booty about getting it on the new console? Like, oh, you want me to spend 400 bucks plus the game? 460, almost 500 plus taxes, 500 bucks for me to play the new Mario? You think I want to do that? No. But here's the thing.
Path of least
If you
resistance.
don't if you don't give me the choice
Hmm.
and I really want to play it, and you're giving me all these other cool patches and there's a really nice um what is it, roadmap of what's expected this year so far. You know how they've done. Hey, after the summer update, we're gonna give you this, we're gonna give you that. Like Nintendo's known to do that. So I feel like yeah, just it's fine. I'm okay with that. Like we have, dude, the Switch library
It's all
is
ridiculous.
incredible. The Wii U getting Breath of the Wild was a miracle.
It's only because
Especially
it started
because
development there, honestly.
it's true. But the fact that it got it at all is so cool. I mean, sure it got the map stripped out of the gamepad, and I'll never forgive them for that. But like, you know, it didn't need to, and they did. This time, they don't need to, and they won't.
I agree.
Where like they're going to use it to sell their system. And like, what other games are you thinking of? Like, obviously we've got Mario Kart we spoke about earlier,
Yes.
so there's probably a Mario Kart. Do you think that'll be right out the gate, or do you think there'll be a bit of a buffer?
I will answer that, but I just want to one last comment on the 3D Mario thing. We both agree it's probably not going to be cross-gen. That's going to be, late 2025 release at all. You need a new Switch 2 for this. And just to piggyback off that, I think it's going to, like I said, a new experience. It's not going to be Odyssey 2. They want to show you, hey, this is only possible on the Switch 2. And Odyssey 2 wouldn't be illustrative of that. If they show Odyssey 2, it's like, well, Odyssey 1 was on Switch 1. Why can't this also work on it? So that's why I think it will be completely different and exclusive. Mario
Mm-hmm.
Kart, that I don't believe will be cross gen. We've talked about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for several minutes, even on this episode. 96 courses, tons of different racers to choose from, tons of game modes, and the online play is still very healthy and a lot of people play it. If you want Mario Kart on Switch 1, you have options for that, as well as the NSO. You could go play Mario Kart Super Circuit or 64. There's plenty of ways to play Mario Kart on Switch 1. besides the fact that I just don't think what they showed in the teaser is possible on Switch 1 with 24 racers at once. Again, it goes back to that thing where, you don't want to coddle the old players too much. You want to give them, you need to give a reason for Betty and Sue to buy the Switch 2, and not just because 4K high resolution textures. They're not going to care about that. They're going to care about,
Right.
hey, the new Mario Kart, you have to get the new console to play these. So I think that's why Mario Kart also will not be one of those cross-gen games. And the follow-up, yes, I believe that's out the gate. They showed that as their first game ever running on Switch 2. I fully expect that to be a launch title.
I 100% am on board if they've got it ready, and they're not like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, hopefully you got the season one DLC pass purchased day one. They're not like that. It's not a Nintendo thing to do, but um, I do hope it's available. Um,
I think that's their game.
I mean, that's a lot of Mario if it is a 3D Mario plus that. I mean, obviously, do you think Metroid 4 supposed to come out this year?
Yeah, I believe Prime 4 is slated for this year. That I do think is going to be one of those cross-gen games. There's no way they're going to be like, "Oh, by the way, you have to get Switch 2 for this one." It's already been
No,
revealed for the Switch 1.
it'll probably be like you get 4K though
Yep.
if you play it on Switch 2. But again,
Either a native
free
port
update
or a
or
patch.
whatever.
Something. They're going to have something for the
Yeah.
Switch 2 on Prime 4. There's no way. I don't think that's
Wait,
going to be a launch day and date game unless it's coming out before the summer. But
going back to what we were talking about with free updates.
mhm,
Maybe it's if you have NSO and it's an IP. How about this? If you have NSO and it's not an IP, you get the game,
what do you mean not an
the
IP?
upgrade. Like, let's say it's a third party Call of Duty and you
It's
want
a
it to
first
be the
party.
Switch. Yeah. And you want it to be like upgraded. Let's say that's not, you have to have NSO to get access to that. Or you can, like you said, maybe you can buy it or something separately. But what if it was all just like Mario, Zelda's, Metroid? And if you're paying, regardless if you're paying for NSO, you got that. You got it. I don't know. Like you buying the console is supporting them. Like maybe in their eyes they see it that way, where it's like, oh, but if it's the third party stuff that you wanted the Switch 2 version of, you'll have to have the NSO in order to access it. Where it's like now it's like, well, oh, a lot of people are gonna buy those because they're gonna buy the NSO because they're gonna get access to the online anyway. They have to pay for online access in order to have, access to it.
That's getting a little needlessly complex. They don't want to overcomplicate it either. And I don't think they would include that as a benefit for third party games on NSO because those third parties are going to want the money themselves. Why would they sign a deal with Nintendo to give it away for free? If anything, I think it's the reverse. The patches and the updates would be included with NSO for first party games, and third party you would have to pay extra for, if at all. Let's talk about some other games that we expect to see. Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered. I expect this might be the time they finally unveil them. They've been holding on to them for Lord knows how long now.
That's Echoes and what? What's the third one?
Prime 3 or Corruption.
Corruption is the third one.
So maybe we get remastered. Maybe it's a dual pack, or maybe it's individual release. Another perfect example of a cross-gen capable game. And I did mention before, this is going to be a soft Switch One Direct. I feel like a lot of these games they're going to
Yeah.
show and be like, also available on Nintendo Switch.
They've been pretty safe in general. Like even with Pokemon Day and like I don't know, everything's pretty safe. I mean, like, which is good, right? Not over ambitious, not over promising. We don't want that. And then them under delivering, right? It's like, hey, let's just. They're probably gauging the interest of everybody from the online reactions and everything.
They said that too.
Um,
I don't know if you heard,
yeah,
but in their investor meeting, they said that they're going to gauge customer interest for and the pricing and how many units they're going to make. They said they're going to adjust and gauge that based on fan reaction to the Switch 2 Direct. So they are going to be paying attention to how people feel about it, which means they may not even show a price in this one. They may price it after they know how
Hmm.
bad people want it.
Hmm.
So
Mm.
they are locked in. They are tuned in. They will be watching our reaction. So, don't get too hyped, guys. Let's keep the price
Do you,
down.
do you think you're gonna be able to pre-order the day they announce everything?
I believe so. April 2nd, like, I thought for sure it would have launched by then, but since that's the direct, I'm expecting like a June release, 2 months away. I don't see why they would announce a separate
Mm.
date for pre-orders, because usually when they announce something, you could pre-order it that day. Switch One, when they had the presentation in January, where they revealed the price, not the initial reveal, that's when you could pre-order it that day. And I think this is the same thing. They had the teaser, hey, this exists. We're going to show you more later. This is the more later point. The April 2nd is this is the big bonanza. We're going to show everything and let you know what you can buy. By the way, start pre-ordering right now. I think that this is
Right.
the time that they do that, where we get the pre-orders. So
I
you
hope
mentioned
so.
safe.
I mean, yeah.
You mentioned safe. Let's talk about some crazy stuff that we could see. All right, we know Mario, Pokemon, Zelda, Metroid. All of those will have some kind of presence in the direct for April. What's something that you think we could see? Maybe not so safe. Maybe something that an old IP that they're busting out of the vaults, taking it out of the forbidden land and bringing it back to light for Switch 2. What's a franchise you think? What's the wild card? What's your wild card for this direct?
Wonderful 102. I'm just kidding. I don't know actually. I don't have. um, I don't have something that comes off the top of my head. Obviously, saying something stupid like that. I don't. I don't know. You know what? You know what I want? I want something brand new.
A new
I
IP.
want. I want the feeling I got when I saw Pikmin on the GameCube. I want the feeling of, oh wow, look at this.
This is
They
different.
took their they took their time to make something up brand new. This isn't a remake. This isn't inspired by. This is brand new. And I know I think I've said that 3 times already now, but I'm gonna say brand new again. But like, yeah, like that's what I want. Is this something that you go, wow, this is something we haven't seen before, and it's gonna be on the new console, and it's only on the new console. I want to have it, and Nintendo, like they've had enough time to do research on what people like and don't like, and right now the video game industry is in a very dwindling state of interest where, you know, right now it's like if your game isn't like Marvel Rivals, which is or um yeah, is it Marvel Rivals? I think so. Um which is like, oh, people are like, oh, it's an Overwatch clone, but like it's successful because of these attributes. And it's like, yeah, understand people want to be able to buy a game, play the game, and if there's online stuff to it, they don't want to have to just empty their wallets out. But unfortunately, games are designed so that consumers are emptying their wallets out because that's the only way, one, they get support from investors, and two, they continue support for the game all of these years later. But Nintendo's like, they're a bit different, right? They've given you the opportunity to buy a game at full price if it's 60, if it's 70 Tears of the Kingdom. Uh, and you have hundreds of hours if you want, and you can put it in there, and you don't have to be connected to the internet, and you don't have to buy
There's
DLC
no
pack, and
season
you
passes. There's no
there's nothing.
battle pass. There's
Yeah,
no loot
yeah,
boxes. People are tired
yeah,
of the games as a service, and I agree with you.
yeah,
I like
yeah,
what you
and
said. I think we will get something. You can't predict it because it's something we haven't seen before, but that's a good call. Something, I agree with that one.
what about you?
Uh, this is, I'll give you two. I'll give you one that I think is a safe bet, and then one that I do think
Hmm.
could be a wild card. So my safe bet,
Okay.
it's time, man. We got to see something Fire Emblem related. It's time. Engage was a couple years ago, and that was just an anniversary project. It wasn't really meant to be a big game.
Yeah,
So
it was kind of a fandom
it's a
thing,
celebration. You
Yeah,
know,
it's a celebration.
it was for the anniversary. I think it was the 25th anniversary. But
Oh wow.
I think we're going to see something Fire Emblem, and there's been a long rumored remake of Fire Emblem 4 from the Super Nintendo. That could be one of
Hmm.
those cross-gen type of games. Hey, we're announcing this here, but also playable on Switch 1. For my wild card, I'm going to throw
Okay.
out one that a lot of people would be really happy to see. I think we see something from Kid Icarus.
Ooh, that's nice.
Whether
Get
it's,
Masahiro back,
yeah,
right? Wasn't that a Sakurai thing?
it was Sakurai Jade
Yeah.
Uprising on 3DS, and he said
Can
in
you
his
imagine
YouTube
him coming?
videos
Dude, can you
he's been
imagine them?
working on something.
Can you imagine? That's a really good call. Can you imagine them showing him and everybody erupting thinking that it's Smash?
They
And
wouldn't
then
show
it's
him
just
first. They wouldn't do that. No way. They are too good with their directs to do that. The only way they do that is if they also say, by the way, Smash 6 is under development. They would never do that.
dude, Smash 6 would totally be a fucking seller though.
Would, but I don't think that's a day one reveal. I think that's something we see a year or two from now. Whether it's
Yeah, that would
whether it's a port or a
even if it was
DLC.
like I could see it. Hey, can I ask you if you know this fact since you're really into the Smash community? When did we when were we teased Smash? Was it in December the year that it was teased?
No.
Or because in
It
my mind it was like a January, December, November type of thing.
believe it was revealed in the March or February direct of 2018, and it was launched December of 2018.
Ah, oh, okay. So it launched later that year.
December 7th, 2018 is when it launched, and then the reveal was no, that's 2021. March 8th. It was the March 8th Nintendo Direct.
Oh,
That's where they had the Splatoon thing. They showed Splatoon. They showed all sorts of stuff for Splatoon 2
you
with the
know what's
DLC.
funny? You know what's funny? Today's March 8th
It sure is. Look at that. Happy what is this? Happy 7th anniversary to the
for Switch
reveal of
reveal.
Super Smash, not the Switch reveal, just the Super Smash Bros Ultimate reveal.
Yeah,
So, that's kind of cool. What a coincidence.
it is. Just talking about it casually, but yeah, I guess yeah, maybe not day one, but they could bring up Smash. But I
I
like
think
what you
that's in
said though. Kid
their starting
Icarus,
roster.
Kid Icarus is cool. What's another? Isn't Kirby another Masahiro?
It's possibly getting
Hmm. Right.
the one where it's like, by the way, playable on Switch 1 because he was
Safe.
already in development for it.
I don't know, man. NSO just expand, bring it DS. You said GameCube. Like, let's let's get, and those
Dreamcast.
are only possible on the Switch too, right? The
Yeah.
maybe the DS one, maybe the GameCube one. And I know that obviously the Switch one can do DS, but maybe there's a little added functionality too where like maybe you can fast forward or like maybe like little things like save points, things like that, right? Like cool stuff at Switch 2 only. Um
Well, I mean,
or maybe
all of the emulators on NSO have the save points, so I don't think that's something
oh
that they would hold back. Because even like the N64 ones, you can do save states in there as well.
oh, okay. Yeah, it is an emulator after all. Hi.
For those who can't see, because we're doing audio only streaming, Cow just got home. So that's the universal sign for wrap it up. But we've been going for almost 2 hours. So what are
Yeah,
you?
we should
What are
probably.
some closing thoughts that you have? Is there anything else that you think we could see in this specific direct? I mean, we talked about a lot of games. We talked about what hardware they may or may not show. What about third parties? What do you think we'll see from third parties on April
Hmm,
2nd?
good point.
Like we know there's going to be a lot of stuff trickling down the line over the next year or two, but what's something that that they want to prioritize showing right away? What's something that even if it's not on the launch date of the Switch 2 release, what's something they want you to know from day one is on the way to Switch 2?
I've said COD so many times that it makes it sound like I play COD, but I don't. And I would say that
What if that's where they reveal the new Call of Duty? Like Nintendo Switch gets the first look of the new game. That would be
would
wild.
be that'd be amazing. Or
Because it's
like
around
you
that
get to
time.
play it first on the Switch
Oh
if
no,
you
they'd
buy
never
it
do that.
now.
They would never
I
do
know, I know, I know, I
that.
know, I know. How
But
much money did they get paid to do that, right?
that would be nuts.
Um,
No way.
I don't know. Mainly because, and I hate to sound cynical, but I'm going to sound cynical. I don't care. I don't care. Mainly because I'm not invested in that. Personally, and I can't even because of my lack of interest with third parties anyway, like I don't play the hippest games. I'm someone who plays a lot of exclusive games on the consoles that they're from because that's kind of my thing. I like to play those games that are made by the creator of the console. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. But in terms of more like how it affects everybody, I don't know. I mean, obviously make Fortnite be available for that. Obviously, I know
That's
Fortnite's
probably a day
available on
one. Yeah.
everything, but like that's got to be there.
I think
Let
you're
me see
thinking
if I
too
could.
broadly. You're thinking like Western. So third-party games is always
Oh,
just Western. You say you don't care. I know you would probably be very happy to play Metaphor ReFantasio on Switch 2. I know you'd love to play Persona 3 Reload in a portable form factor on Nintendo Switch 2. Final Fantasy 7
mm,
Remake Intergrade on Switch 2. I think you would care greatly about that.
yeah, more Japanese titles.
Hmm.
Yeah, even something like even like Jusant, um, which is an Xbox game. I think it's made by Don't Nod, the company who makes Life is Strange. Um, they're a French company, and they made Jusant, and it's a beautiful game. It looks gorgeous. It would run probably really well on Switch. You could get a game like that, which is kind of like an eye candy, like cool game. Um, yeah, I guess you're right. I see what you mean.
Elden Ring. I didn't even mention Elden Ring. That feels like it's obvious.
It does feel like it's obvious. Yeah, because we don't have a portable way to play that unless you have it on a portable like
Like Steam Deck.
PC.
Hmm.
I know, yeah, like yeah, but you know how the Steam Deck is going through something right now. It's really interesting. Every time I look online about Steam Deck, it's not that there's any hate toward it, but there's definitely like a superior complex where like, oh, the Steam Deck, it's like the weakest of the PC portables, and it's like, yeah, okay, like hold on, dude, like pioneered it, but then also it has really great support. Shut the hell up. But um, yeah, there's a lot that could happen. We're just in it's a dreary time in gaming just because there's so many layoffs, so many things changing,
Hmm.
companies like games stopping production, things being pulled off.
Yeah.
Uh,
The
like
Wonder Woman game canceled. That was one that was in development for
yeah,
a while.
exactly. It's like sad because there's not only other people's livelihoods in the balance, but you know our timeline's changing. We're not going to get certain content anymore, right? Art is being lost.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That's why I stick to what I said at first. I just want brand new stuff. And who knows? Maybe the Switch 2 introduces creativity again, even to devs, like from third parties, not just in house. It's like maybe devs come together and they're like, hey, actually,
What if we get some
Nintendo.
exclusives?
What
Just as
if?
they could
What?
do multi-plat, what if they want to develop a specific game just for Nintendo's audience?
That's exactly what I was gonna say because I'm like, what if Nintendo just said, "Hey, we're all actually offering. If you have a cool enough idea, we'll help you."
We'll publish it.
And boom, and that's it. And
Octopath
yeah, and
Traveler,
they'll
that's
get
a
it on there.
perfect example. It eventually went to other consoles, but it started on Switch because Nintendo published it. And it was
It got
so
its
great.
success on Switch. Yeah,
HD2D is a huge thing now because of Octopath Traveler.
that would be great, dude. Chrono Trigger,
Oh
dude,
my
getting a
god.
Chrono Trigger on Switch
HD2D.
2,
Oh my god.
on
Yes.
Switch 2,
Take my
on
money.
Switch 2, dude. That's easy,
Easy money. All right. I
easy.
don't think we're going to top that with anything better than HD2D Chrono Trigger. So let's go ahead and call it there. That's the highlight of the night. Nothing will get you more excited than thinking about a proper 2D remake of Chrono Trigger. But I think we're going to end it here. Just a reminder, we will be streaming live for the Switch 2 Direct on April 2nd, just a little less than a month away from now. Can't wait to see you all there and react live to it. It's going to be an awesome time. It's basically video game Christmas, as Soldier mentioned. It can be a bit dark reading all the news about the gaming industry these days. So Nintendo has always been a ray of sunshine in that darkness when it comes to Nintendo Directs. Unlike Pokemon Presents or State of Play or the Xbox developer, whatever the hell they call theirs, or any other company's video form news channel things, Nintendo Directs always seem to bring the hype. You're going to see some really cool stuff, whether you're a fan of Western games, Japanese games, platformers, you name it. If it's something that can show up on a Nintendo console, you have a good chance of seeing it in a Nintendo Direct, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see. So, hope to see you guys there. Zero.exe signing off. Any closing thoughts from you, Soldier?
Yeah, thank you for anybody still listening this far to this episode of Class Zero Soldiers. It's always great to be talking with you, Zero. And